For too long, Africa has been spoken of as if it were powerless, as if its people were destined only to serve, only to suffer, only to bend their backs under the weight of those who sought to dominate it. But today, I raise my voice not just for Burkina Faso, not just for West Africa, but for an entire continent that has carried pain and yet still rises with dignity. This is not a voice of surrender. This is not a voice of weakness. This is a voice of fire, of resistance, of a new dawn that refuses to be dimmed. For centuries, outsiders looked at Africa and saw only riches to be stolen, lands to be divided, people to be exploited. They built their empires on the backs of Africans' sweat, blood, and tears. And still they believed that Africa would remain silent, broken, obedient. But they were wrong. Africa has never been weak. Africa has never been without spirit. From the warriors who resisted colonial armies to the farmers who refused to abandon their soil, to the mothers who carried hope through generations of hardship, this land has always stood tall even in the darkest nights. And now, in this era, we will no longer whisper, we will shout. We will no longer bow, we will rise. We will no longer accept chains disguised as aid, or threats disguised as partnership. The time has come to speak with one voice, with one heart, with one unshakable resolve. Africa will never bow again. When we speak of Africa's journey, we cannot ignore the weight of history that rests on the shoulders of every man, woman, and child on this continent. Long before outsiders set their eyes on our lands, Africa thrived with kingdoms, empires, and civilizations that stood proudly as symbols of wisdom and strength. From the libraries of Timbuktu to the walls of Great Zimbabwe, from the pharaohs of Kemet to the warriors of the Ashanti, Africa was not a continent in darkness. It was a beacon of knowledge, trade, and power. But when the winds of colonization swept across these lands, they brought chains, guns, and greed. They divided Africa with lines drawn on maps in faraway cities, treating nations as property and people as commodities. The Berlin Conference of 1884 was not just a meeting of foreign powers. It was the beginning of a robbery that would scar generations. They carved up Africa without consent, without care, as though we were not human, as though our voices did not matter. For centuries, foreign empires extracted the very lifeblood of this continent: gold, diamonds, rubber, cocoa, oil, and above all, the dignity of its people. Millions of Africans were taken as slaves, torn from their families, their villages, their soil. They were forced into ships, chained in darkness, sold in markets, treated as less than human. Those who remained faced oppression under the colonial boot, their culture suppressed, their languages erased, their traditions ridiculed. Yet even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, Africa's spirit did not die. Resistance rose again and again, through warriors who fought battles against colonial armies, through leaders who sparked revolutions, through ordinary people who carried the torch of freedom in their hearts. When independence swept across Africa in the mid-20th century, many believed a new dawn had arrived. Flags were raised, anthems were sung, and dreams were born of a future where Africans would finally govern themselves. But the shadow of colonialism did not disappear so easily. The chains were replaced with debts, the guns with agreements that favored foreign powers, and the promises of development with exploitation under new names. The resources of Africa continued to flow outward, enriching others while leaving its people in poverty. Multinational corporations and global institutions stepped in where colonial rulers left off, ensuring that Africa remained trapped in a cycle of dependence. And yet, throughout this long and painful history, Africa never truly surrendered. From the speeches of leaders like Kwame Nkrumah and Thomas Sankara to the courage of everyday citizens who resisted oppression, the continent kept reminding the world that its story was not over. Africa's struggle has always been one of survival and rebirth. For every attempt to silence it, the continent found a way to speak louder. For every effort to chain it, Africa found a way to break free. Today, when we say Africa will never bow again, we do so with the memory of those who were enslaved, those who were colonized, those who resisted, and those who died for freedom. Their sacrifices are not forgotten, and their voices echo in ours. If there is one truth that history has taught us, it is that Africa's greatest weapon is not the richness of its soil or the abundance of its resources, but the unity of its people. Alone, one nation may be vulnerable to outside pressure, to manipulation, to threats and sanctions. But together, when Africa speaks with one voice, no power on earth can bend it. The time has come to recognize that division is the tool of those who wish to dominate us. They pit nation against nation, ethnic group against ethnic group, language against language, and faith against faith, knowing that a divided Africa is an Africa that can be controlled. But that era is ending. The youth of this continent see through the lies. They know that what connects us is far stronger than what divides us. We share a history of struggle, a destiny of freedom, and a dream of a future built on our own terms. Unity is not a dream to be whispered about in conferences. It must be the living reality of our people. It must mean economic strength, where our resources are shared among us, not siphoned off to distant lands. It must mean cultural pride, where our languages, traditions, and stories are celebrated, not erased. It must mean political solidarity, where the leaders of Africa stand shoulder to shoulder and declare that no foreign hand will dictate the destiny of this continent. We cannot afford to compete with each other when the real battle is against those who have exploited us for centuries. We cannot afford to see our neighbors as rivals when they are our brothers and sisters in the same struggle. Strength is born when unity takes root. Imagine an Africa where borders no longer divide trade, where the young minds of one nation collaborate with the innovators of another, where our armies are not fragmented but stand as guardians of peace for the entire continent. Imagine an Africa that invests in its farmers, its teachers, its doctors, and its workers, not as pawns in a global market, but as the backbone of a self-sufficient future. That Africa is not an illusion, it is within reach if we stand together. Our strength will never come from begging for aid, from bowing to conditions set by those who do not care about our people. It will come from building with our own hands, from trusting in our own abilities, from believing that what we create here can serve us better than anything handed down from outside. For generations, Africa has been pressured, threatened, and manipulated by powerful nations that see this continent not as an equal partner, but as a land to control. They come with promises of aid, but hidden behind their smiles are chains. They speak of partnership, but behind their words are contracts that strip us of our sovereignty. They send diplomats with soft voices, but when we refuse to kneel, they unleash sanctions, isolation, and propaganda. They want Africa silent, they want Africa obedient. But today we say with one voice, those days are finished. We are not afraid of their pressure, because pressure cannot crush a continent that has already endured centuries of slavery, colonization, and exploitation. What more can they threaten us with? We have survived the worst they could inflict, and still Africa stands. When they threaten us with economic sanctions, they believe we will break. But let us ask ourselves, what is the value of wealth if it comes at the price of dignity? What is the use of trade if it forces us to give away our land, our resources, and our people's future? We would rather endure hardship with dignity than live in comfort as slaves. No nation should dictate to Africa how it should govern itself. No foreign power should decide who leads us, and no outside authority should think it can command our destiny. They may try to punish us, but we will not kneel. They may try to isolate us, but we are not alone. We have each other, and together Africa is greater than the world realizes. They send threats because they are afraid. They know the power of Africa united. They know that if Africans decide to control their own resources, the balance of global power will shift forever. They fear a continent that stands tall, because for centuries their wealth, their industries, their empires were built on the backs of African labor and the riches stolen from African soil. If Africa says no, their empires tremble. This is why they pressure us. This is why they try to silence leaders who dare to speak. This is why they spread lies in the media to make Africa appear unstable, weak, and incapable. But we know the truth. We know that the real instability comes from those who exploit and interfere, not from those who demand freedom. The future that stands before Africa is not a dream too distant to touch. It is a reality waiting to be built with our own hands, our own sweat, and our own determination. When we speak of tomorrow, we do not speak with fear. We speak with hope and certainty. We see a continent where every child can grow without hunger, where education is not a privilege for the few but a right for all, where healthcare reaches every village and city, where opportunity is not reserved for the elite, but flows to the farmer, the worker, the teacher, and the youth in every corner of our land. This is the Africa we are building, and nothing can stop it. Our vision for the future is one where Africa is no longer defined by what others take from it, but by what it creates for itself and for the world. We have the resources to fuel our own industries, to light up our own homes, to feed our own people, and to inspire innovation that competes on the global stage. The diamonds, the gold, the oil, the fertile soil, these are not curses, they are blessings when placed in the hands of people determined to use them wisely. No longer will Africa's riches flow outward while its people remain in poverty. In the future, we see these resources will serve us, they will uplift us, and they will secure a better life for generations to come. This vision is not limited to material wealth. It is rooted in dignity. We see a future where the youth of Africa stand tall, no longer leaving their homeland in desperation, but staying to build, to dream, and to achieve. We see universities where innovation thrives, where ideas are born that can solve Africa's problems without waiting for outside solutions. We see cities that rise not as copies of foreign lands, but as living expressions of African identity, vibrant with culture, music, and tradition. We see villages empowered with technology, farmers connected to markets, women leading with strength, and communities thriving without fear of exploitation. The journey will not be without challenges, but the vision of a brighter tomorrow is stronger than any obstacle. The same hands that once built pyramids, that once forged kingdoms, that once resisted oppression, will now build a new Africa of progress, unity, and peace. The youth are not waiting for permission, they are ready to take responsibility for the future. The mothers and fathers of Africa have carried the weight of suffering for too long. Now they will carry the joy of seeing their children thrive. The sacrifices of our ancestors will not be in vain, for we will honor them by creating a continent worthy of their dreams. And so, the future is not something we wait for. It is something we create step by step together. We are not powerless. We are not destined to remain in the shadows. The future is ours to shape, and we will shape it with courage, with unity, and with an unbreakable spirit. Africa will rise not tomorrow, not in some distant age, but now, with the voices of its people declaring with pride, we will never bow again. We will stand tall, and we will build the future we deserve.